throw my book down where I have all the images of the chapel. So I throw it down and I walk away from my group. And the first few years, other tour guides would stop and they're like, what happened? Is she leaving our group?
Namaste everyone, welcome to the tourism story, and here's another episode. And I have a really amazing guest with me, Mitra. She's from Italy. She's award-winning tour guide. She's founder, CEO, and lead tour guide, and a photographer and whatnot, and influencer as well. So
No.
Mitra, we know you like all these things, but I really want to know, how do you see yourself?
How do I see myself?
Yeah,
This is going to be a brutally honest answer. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm
thank you.
very
Welcome.
excited to be here with you
Yeah,
finally. It's been a long time coming. How I see myself as a historian.
yeah,
I see myself as a tour guide. I see myself as a mother. I see myself as an entrepreneur. And I see myself as a hardworking person. In terms of social media, how do
yeah,
I see myself? See myself as the struggling odd duckling out. I feel like I have worked so hard trying to find a place. So my social media experience started as an experiment, trying to find a space for a historian and a tour guide
yeah,
online. And unfortunately, I realized looking at a lot of tour guiding profiles, they're very dry. They're not
yeah,
very exciting.
yeah, yeah.
And this is why they don't have very big followings. No, because if you take not so enticing pictures with your phone of monuments or food with flash photography or your phone, they're not what we call visually appetizing for people to
Yeah,
want to follow you. And also, you are in huge competition with your city accounts or country accounts that are reposting the best of the top photographers in the world. So, what I did is I spent about a year studying social media and I looked at the travel bloggers
yeah,
and how they were doing it. And then I decided to try if I could fit a crack in between a travel agency, tour guide, and a travel blogger
yeah,
and see if that would work. And that's why I make an effort to get dressed and put on a pretty dress,
yeah,
because I know that before you want to listen to the historical caption I'm giving to you, because all of my Instagram posts are mini history lessons. No, so I still do my job by
yeah,
teaching you within the very limited word count that Instagram is giving me. But I try to pull the viewer in visually to start with. And then
yeah,
I also do the tours in my stories. And the same thing, I do put in quite an effort to create slides with music and images
yeah,
to
yeah,
make it visually appealing, because we are visual creatures. So, but I still always look at myself as I'm struggling. I don't think I, I'm still not convinced of my place on social media, to be honest with you. I feel that I'm not convinced that social media wants me, in the sense that sometimes it's still, you write this very thoughtful, meaningful, long caption, you're trying to teach, and then the comments, I love your dress is pretty, your dress is pretty. So, like, you
yeah. I
play the
mean,
game, but you get frustrated at the
yeah.
game at the
I
same
think,
time, because I'm not there to show you my dress. I mean, I
yeah,
am, but I'm not. I'm not going to show up in a ball gown to give you a tour. You
I
know what
get
I
it.
mean?
I get it. I think the problem is
So,
that people find it difficult to understand the complex thing. People find it difficult. People want to simplify the things. They want
I
to
do.
just like I did. They want to call you a travel influencer or a travel blogger. They don't want to call you somebody who's running an entrepreneur, who's tour guide and historian. They want to simplify things for themselves. So I think
They
that's
do, they
the
do. But
thing.
so I'm there. I'm there to remind them that they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
am there to remind them that there are female historians,
yeah,
and that we are really good at what we do.
yeah,
I'm there to remind them that there is something valuable in learning from history, and I am slowly this year, actually, recently, I've started to feel that I'm collecting more and more. I call them a bit my tribe. People that are
yes,
genuinely interested, people that
community,
are
yeah,
looking forward to their history. And then the fact that people are writing to me and telling me, I never used to be interested in history, but you are making me interested in it. And
yeah.
for me, this is a huge win, because this is the same reason
Wow.
I do student travel normally. It is
Yeah,
normally,
yeah,
I do not make money traveling with schools and students. I donate my time for this, but it's because I want to give them an entry gate into history and culture, but in a fun way, because I know that in order to give you a tour, I must adapt a tour to who you are.
Yes.
It is not important what I know.
Yeah.
I don't need to show you my academic pedigree and overwhelm you with dates and numbers, because dates and numbers are only important if you either one, do an exam, two, are studying that period very specifically,
Yeah.
or three, you already have context. But mind you that 99% of travelers that come to you as a tour guide, they don't have context.
Yeah.
They don't understand in what distance of time Julius Caesar, the Vikings, and the popes and Michelangelo exist necessarily, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to help them by creating, like, one of the things my groups like when I do in the Roman Forum, when I do group
Mhm.
tours,
Mhm.
I do a whole summary of 3,000 years of Roman history in 12 and a half minutes.
Wow. I
And
try
we
to do
call it
the
the Cliff
same.
Notes version.
Yeah.
But it's basically jumping in highlights so that they get a bit
Yeah.
of a
They
timeline,
can
and
get
it
the
helps
timeline. Yeah.
them
Yeah.
approach like the idea of understanding. And I know that in the past, I've also had some conversations with some of my colleagues when they say, I cannot believe people don't know who this saint is. They don't know the story of the Bible. And I always ask them, if you go to their country, do you know their main gods? Do you know what was happening in the 12th
Mhm.
century in their country? I said, if these people already knew, you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So it's your job to put it in context. And lately in Rome, the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, we've had a lot of travelers come in from Southeast Asia, from Central Asia.
Yeah.
And when I have groups in advance that I know that are coming from different continents and different cultures out of a Western context, I try personally to study ahead of time the parallel history in their country to whatever
Wow.
tour I'm
Yeah.
giving them,
Yeah.
so that I can actually pull real parallels to
Yeah.
them and explain, for example, the importance of a certain person or a certain event
Yeah.
in comparison to this certain event, because then that gives them more context and they can absorb the tour better. And that is the job of a tour guide. It's not your job to stand there and be a snob about your accomplishments and how well studied you are,
Yeah.
because you can go into your colleagues and have a coffee and you can all admire each other.
Yeah.
But as a tour guide and a historian, I believe in the 21st century, our jobs are to make it approachable and allow people to find an entryway of their own interest. Because
Yes.
as you know, Roman history is a rabbit hole. Once you start studying, you can't
Yeah.
help
It's
but
gonna
keep
go
studying
deep.
more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna go deep.
It's just conveying that on social media, it's sometimes more complicated than in real life, because in real life, I get you in front of me for 3 hours or 4.
Yes.
And so it's a bigger impact on my
Yeah.
behalf. And I also get to walk around in the monuments.
Yeah.
But on social media, I'm fighting an incredibly saturated space.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
No, but I do try very much to elevate the art of tour guiding and to be a historian, to show that I do not need to fit a stereotype. I don't need to dress in all black or tweed or
Yeah.
remove my makeup because you need to take me seriously. This is a concept I have been fighting since I worked corporate in my young life.
Yeah.
Don't put your hair down, don't put big earrings on, don't have nails this way. My appearance does not affect my intellect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no. And then I I do take a certain pride in showing up and looking nice for my client, because it is being representative of my profession. I don't need to show up in the same t-shirt I had this last 3 days and some cargo military pants and sneakers with holes in them, and that's somehow going to deepen my authority as a tour guide, which, I may or may
No,
not see a lot of people do that.
I see that you have created your own identity, and that's very beautiful that you have created your own identity, your own world, your own style. And I think tour guiding is about that you create your own style. You stand out by your personality, your mindset, and that's really good. I would like to know more about the 12.5 minute thing you do. Don't give us detail, but just help us how to do. Like, if I want to talk about India, what should all I cover? How should I cover it?
So every good story has a beginning, a middle, and the end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's
So
right.
your storytelling, you need to focus on the foundation.
Yeah,
So for example, you're tour guide and you probably can't say, obviously, for me,
everything.
right? I'm doing the foundation of Rome.
Yeah,
I do Roman history. I couldn't do Italian history in 12 and a half minutes.
yeah,
That's ridiculous. That would be impossible. But so what I do is you have to focus on the city, the place you're tour guiding.
yeah,
And you start with the origin story. right?
Yeah, I get it. I
So
get
for
it.
me,
I
example,
do
I
it.
make
Yeah.
a joke out of it. I make a joke out of it
Yeah.
because our origin story involves gods of war, a she-wolf nursing two twins. And so I start with this story and then I pause and I said, how am I doing? And they're always like, oh, it's great. And I always ask them, you really don't want to question my credibility. I'm not talking about she-wolves and gods of war. And then I take that as a moment to talk about how history uses, analogies, that
Yeah.
the she-wolves really represent prostitutes, and maybe we don't have gods of war, but we do have a lot of warfare happening.
Yeah.
So these are like, we have to separate a history, especially in the BC era, is a lot of word of mouth tradition.
Yeah.
It takes a long time before, and then so we kind of speed up, like we do foundation, then we become a kingdom, and then the kingdom will fall and we get a republic. This is how the republic starts. Fast forward, this is how the republic ends.
Yeah.
Empire starts. Fast forward, this is when we legalize Christianity. Empire falls, Christian empire rises, kings come along, Mussolini,
Wow.
Italian country becomes unified, and then we have locked in all of Italian history.
Wow, that's great. I do the same thing, but I don't go. I mean, I'm not doing it the way you're doing, but I just begin with the history of India, and I think that is the Indus Valley civilization, the one of the oldest civilization, and then starting from there, I bring them to the Delhi. How like major, considering the sites, talking about the sites and the people which they might be familiar. So that's how I do it. I would like to like
Yeah, you
incorporate this.
just have to,
Yeah.
you have to do it. And then maybe I should film myself one day doing this. I am quite
Yeah,
animated when I
yeah,
give
yeah, yeah,
tours.
yeah, yeah. You should do it for at least for me. I don't know about others, but I
Because
would like to
I
watch it.
am very
Okay.
animated. Like I
Yeah.
never stand like this and just
Yeah.
give my tour and I talk like this. I am the tour guide who I'm jumping up on rocks.
Yeah.
I'm moving. So this is also the thing. Every time you want to talk to your group for a greater length of time, because there's always these moments in tours, there's some sections that will require a longer
Yeah.
momentum. You can't do everything
Mhm.
in 30-second blocks. But the important thing is that you actually keep moving. And this way your group will have to track you,
Yeah.
meaning they have to keep moving themselves and see what you're
Yeah,
doing.
and then
And this keeps them
hearing
from
you.
sitting
Yeah.
still and doing, the falling forward and the nodding. So it's the same thing I do with the Sistine Chapel presentation. I'm very animated. I'm like changing voices. I'm doing
Oh yeah.
character actions.
Yeah.
I'm Raphael. I'm Michelangelo. I'm the Pope. And I'm even throwing things up in the air at a certain point. Like it's to keep them engaged. At this point, I don't care about looking silly. No,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
no ego in this type of
Yeah.
business. It's to keep them engaged. I can still tell you a full outright storytelling, but make it entertaining for you.
Yeah.
Because in the end, these are just human beings and they are quite entertaining in their pettiness and their
Yeah.
drama and their jealousies. So I think
I
it's more
think
important just be dynamic, to be dynamic when you tour guide,
yeah.
to be moving and not to be afraid of like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose
Judgment.
face. I'm going to
Yeah.
look so
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
If a
Or
colleague
the
walks by me,
judgment.
they're going to
Yeah.
think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I made my colleagues jump in the Vatican museums because I make this whole thing when Michelangelo gets angry at the Pope. So I throw my book down where I have all the images of the chapel. So I throw it down and I walk away from my group. And the first 3 years, other tour guides would stop and they're like, what happened? Is she leaving our group? And then I like make a U-turn and I come back and my group is just laughing. But it's just to keep the dynamics and not care what other people think.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of people that obviously are in academia. You take these professions very seriously, need to be respected. But in the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that your group had a good time.
Yeah.
That they will remember you. And it's not always, when I tell people, they often tell me at one point, oh my goodness, I'm never going to remember all of this.
Yeah.
I said, it's not so much the information you need to remember when you leave here. It's the feeling I left you with,
Yeah.
and it's the feeling Rome left you with. So if you leave feeling that you learned a lot and you leave feeling that you had a good time, then you're going to remember it always as
Yeah.
you having had a good time.
Okay, I have one
That's the
one
most
one thing
important.
to ask. What do you think? This kind of things do they come naturally, or you can learn being
You can
creative?
learn.
You can learn. Right.
Learn.
So I
Learn.
think
You know
we
why I
need
say
to.
that? So I
Yeah.
say so
Yeah.
certainly
Okay.
because me, when I started this job, I was very shy.
Yeah.
I'm a huge introvert by personality.
Yeah.
I'm very introverted. I was the person that would be very embarrassed if people would look at me when I gave a tour. And I was also the person that would lose my track of thought.
Yeah.
If somebody started filming me or taking
Yeah,
pictures of me, I
same,
got very
same.
flustered
Yeah.
and I would stop mid-sentence, I would forget what I was saying. And I had to push myself. I
Yeah.
had to learn to overcome this myself. I was a very, the typical student who was sitting in the front of the class, always her hand up, writing exams. But even my teacher would be like, you have to speak up more. Yeah, but I raised my hand. Speak up more, she would say. You have to engage more. I won't give you the highest grade until you engage more. And I would
Yeah.
get so frustrated in school. I said, but I
Yeah.
have, 100% on all my exams. She's like, you need to engage more in class, because I was very quiet.
Yeah.
And so with tour guiding, I was, like I study everything. And my first year, I had all the information. I was very, and then I realized that's not what they need. There are clientele who are informed and prepared and they have great context, and you can throw a greater amount at them. But the majority of people need a base introduction. And the reason why you need to keep studying
Yeah.
and why you need to keep always learning more is that you need to understand yourself, the bigger picture and concept. You need to be prepared to answer any and all kinds of questions. But also, when people ask me, don't you get bored of doing the same tour? I smile and I said, the Vatican Museum has tens of thousands of sculptures alone, and I'm not counting paintings, I'm not counting tapestries. I said, I walk into one room, there's 300 pieces of art.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm in here 3 times a day and I talk about the same 5 pieces in the same room every day? Because then I would be the stupid one.
Yeah.
My tour can absolutely be 100% different, even if I did it 4 times a day, simply on the basis that I have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
You need to know a royal palace that you take your clients into, like the back of your hand, because if room A and B happen to be closed one day, you, with no problem, will walk into room C and D.
Yeah.
And I have noticed this even in Rome, because when we get very heavy rains, sometimes our Roman Forum, which is an archaeological site out in the open, it floods, so they have to close it, and our
Yeah.
groups cannot go in there.
Yeah.
And so I remember I had a tour guide one day and I called her and I said, take them to the museum on the hill instead, the Capitoline Museum. And she said, I can't do that museum. And I remember I went quiet on the phone and I said, how are you a tour guide? Yes, but I only studied it 10 years ago for my exam. I haven't been there since. And I found no words. And I said, no, never mind. I said, I will go and do the tour. So I left my child on a Sunday and I went and did the tour, because I will go and do this tour all through the year. I will make my private clients go there, or I will go there by myself, because I need to have backup alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which in this case, a lot of tour guides get stuck doing. Most cities have like a top 3.
Yeah.
All the
Absolutely.
clients want to do the same tours,
Yeah.
and most people get very easily stuck in these tours. But it's your responsibility to know how to tour as much as possible, and nobody can tour everything and do it well.
Yeah.
I mean, in Rome, we have 900 churches. I would be an absolute liar if I told you I know how to tour guide in all 900 churches, but I know how to give a tour in about 40 of them.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Wow.
but that's still 860 to go.
Yeah.
So it's about, Rome is huge. Like we just have so much. So for us, it's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go back to your childhood. Please tell us about your childhood. Where were you born and all those things?
I was born in Stockholm.
Yeah.
Which is the capital of Sweden, although my mother's family is from northern Lapland, so high up in the Scandinavian countries. My father is from Iran. They met in Greece, but I am born in Sweden. And my parents got divorced when I was 4. So I grew up with a single mother. And my father remarried, and then he left his second family as well. And so he left my little brother and his mother by themselves and disappeared. Nobody knew where he went. And 1 year later, he showed up again in America, remarried again. So I have 2 more brothers in America. And the brother that was born in Sweden has since then moved to America as well. So I am actually the only one in my family who's not an American citizen.
Yeah.
But my half brothers are. My youngest half brother, that was born in America, managed to get a Swedish passport through I just called him his father. He's not my father, I don't feel. And so he lives in Berlin now. So he actually lives in Europe. And we, the siblings, with no help from our father, have made a massive effort to create a relationship in our adult years.
Wow.
So we actually have a really good, when they were young, the youngest one is America, their mother made a very big effort. When I was 14, I picked up the torch and I carried it. And then finally, by the time they hit their late teens, early 20s, it started to become a two-way street. And mind you, there's a 14 and 18-year age difference between us. But they are great uncles to their two nieces. They were here just last year.
Wow.
And like I said, one lives in Europe. And so we talk several times a week. We stay in touch. So we've made a very big effort in our adult years to create our own version of siblinghood and family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And
That's really beautiful. And tell me about your school life. What did you study in your college? I think you studied business.
So yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
So I was already in school. I was always really, so in Scandinavian schools, we study religion as one of our base topics. It's theology around the world. So we study all the world's religions. So we get an introduction to, all different religions in every single continent around the world. And it was one of my favorite topics together with history. But I was a kid who would always read ahead in the history books. I'd flip ahead the pages, and history was one of my best topics. But when it came time to go to university, and I said I wanted to study history, people said, "Oh, you can be a teacher." At the age of 19, that thought did not appeal to me at all to be a teacher, especially having grown up with a single mother who did not have money. I grew up very poor. I started working and helping out at home at the age of 12. And so I wanted, essentially, I wanted to make money. I wanted to have a career. So I went and studied business finance.
Yeah.
And then you started working. As boring. And then that was exactly as boring as everybody warned me it would be. Yeah. I started working. So I was studying and working at the same time. All right. And so I worked in private equity. And then I actually worked with Ericsson, the telecom company. Yep. I was a project manager for operational development. And then I also worked in a system that's called Six Sigma, which is obsolete today. Yes. Now everything is agile, everything, but so I'm a Six Sigma black belt.
Wow.
I'm a Six Sigma black belt.
I thought of doing it, but I did not do it. So thank God.
well, in Europe, a Six Sigma, I would say, is completely obsolete at this point. Now everything is agile, everything. But so mind you, this is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But so during this time, I started to take online classes. I wanted to take, like Introduction to Ancient History, and then I started taking evening classes and weekend classes. So we have this university system where if we just pay, normally our universities are free, but then these are extracurricular university hours. So essentially you have these teachers that are working between 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and they give exams on weekends, and you only pay maybe a couple €100 a year to participate in this. And there's a lot of people that work to do that. But after a while, one of the teachers, he was looking at my list of classes I already taken at the fall when we were starting a new class. And he said, "You're following the same curriculum as the history program." He's like, "Why don't you add these other classes and you just get another degree?" And that's what I ended up doing. So I took the ancient history degree. Now then I worked with Ericsson, but I worked in like 2000, 2001, 2002. Telecom famously was coming crashing down by 2002, 2003. And it was a very uncomfortable work environment to work in. I mean, Ericsson did these huge global layoffs, and the people that were still working ended up being incredibly overworked because what they did is that they eliminated people's work positions. But what happened, we who were still there, we had to absorb them. So at one point I was doing essentially 3 full-time jobs, and so were a lot of my colleagues. Wow. My mentor ended up having a heart attack at the age of 54 because he was overworked. I ended up being burned out at 23. But I mean, I would sleep between 30 to 90 minutes a night the last 10 months of me working this pace. And so I ended up getting severely burned out, actually, and I was put on medical leave for burnout. And so during this period, I then went to England and I lived in the countryside for about 10 months. I went training show jumping with my horse. As a break. And I worked off my keep and my horse's keep. Wow. So unfortunately, what I didn't necessarily rest, but I worked physically harder. Before it was mental. Mentally, so instead this was all physical. I get it. And then I wanted to go back to office working, but not a huge corporation. So I took a job in a smaller company as a vice president of marketing. But
Mhm.
then I don't think the corporate climate in general was very good around 03, 04 into 05 still.
Mhm.
So very much the same started happening, a lot of layoffs, people being overworked, and I don't want to do this again.
Yeah,
I
I think
really
that's
don't
the
want to.
corporate life. I think that's the corporate life.
And it is, but I realized that, one of the reasons why I started having a really hard time with corporate life was actually
Mhm.
that I worked a lot with charity and volunteering. And so this very idealized part of me started to clash really hard with this capitalist corporate
Yeah,
part.
I get
But
it.
I also like corporate life, watching how little it values humanity
Yeah,
and how people sacrifice themselves so much for the corporation, when the corporation, you could literally die at your desk and you're replaced tomorrow. So
same
I
page.
realized that this was the most absurd thing to participate in, and it
We are
was
on the
not for me.
same
And
page. Yeah.
God bless whoever wants to participate. But I realized it wasn't for me. So I quit, and I was actually going to move to Paris because I had studied
Wow.
French for 9 years in school.
Wow.
And so I was moving to Paris. Yes, in Swedish schools, we get languages as an elective because we know nobody's going to speak Swedish. So we start English in, now it's the first grade in elementary school. In my day,
Yeah.
it was the fourth grade.
Okay.
And then we start in sixth grade, we start a second language in
Mhm.
Swedish school. So in my case, it was French. And I studied it all done through, superior and high school and college. But then I got sidetracked, as I like to call it, because there were friends of friends that we had met traveling that were in Rome working with tourism. They came to Stockholm. The friend that knew them had been busy, so I ended up touring them around for a few days in Stockholm and spending time with them.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months after they left, they started emailing me and said, "You should come to Rome and be a tour guide." And I said, "Well, that's not even a real job." Little did I know.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, thank you. I'm not interested." So I said no for 6 months. But then I went in January 2005, and I went and visited for a week in Rome, and they toured me senseless. And obviously, once I was here, it wasn't a very hard sell. And I had actually lived in Italy 8 years previous in south of Italy. I
Yeah.
had said 6 months earlier to a friend of mine, I would really like to live in Italy again. And while
Wow.
I think my mindset was maybe Tuscany, because that's, the Italy we knew of in Scandinavia still 20 years ago,
Yeah.
I ended up in Rome. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I'll come for a year and then I'll go to Paris. And so I came in
Great.
March 2005. And then I hit the ground running. I came on a Wednesday night by myself with my little dog and my suitcase. I slept on a pull-out chair for 3 months with
Wow.
this acquaintance who was quite a playboy. And I ended up sitting 4 nights out of 7, comforting all his different girlfriends who were weeping. Why does he
Wow.
not love me? And I was like, who
Wow.
are you? Why am I sitting here with all your crying women? And at one point I said, you have to leave me money. I'm buying so much tea and chocolate for these girls,
Yeah.
you know. And you're out every night with different women as well. They're here ringing the doorbell, hoping to catch you. Instead, they find me, and I'm like, hello, therapy corner, I'm open. So after 3 months, I was unsustainable to take care of all these weeping women. So I moved out.
Wow.
I
Wow.
moved out. Also because I discovered that this person wanted me to be basically his pyramid scheme. He's like, oh, like, I want you to give me 20% of everything that you're earning. And I said, you're crazy. Get
Wow.
away from me. So I moved out. And then I also realized what I had not been told upon moving here is that to be a tour guide in Italy, you have to have a license. And this
Yeah,
person who I had
absolutely.
met, who was recruiting me, was an illegal American living in Rome. I did not know he was any of this until I moved to Rome
Yeah,
and
yeah.
found it out. I then started studying for the tour guide exam, and
Yeah.
I honestly can tell you, it's all in Italian. It's very
Oh,
archaic
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Italian.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
It's
remember.
and it's one of the hardest exams in all of Italy because Rome has 25,000 protected sites that we have to study.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for private lessons with some other tour guides, with
Mhm.
one of the best archaeologists in Italy.
Mhm.
And he is to this day one of the greatest teachers that I've ever had the privilege to study under. And I still study with him a lot during the winters because he has a cultural association with other archaeologists and they do lessons. And some of them they do specifically for tour guides. So
Great,
tour
great.
guides in Italy and Rome, we have the fortune that our field of study we are continuously immersed in it with the leading experts in the field.
Yeah.
So both in the Vatican and art galleries and within theology, artistry, they do specific courses for tour guides all through the winters that are just for us, which is great. And so we
Oh, yeah.
participate for the most part in them, and that's how we further ourselves. And then after 5 years of being here, I figured I was actually going to go back to Sweden.
Not France?
No, France. I was actually going to go back to school for the third time.
Wow.
I had decided to pursue medicine. And so I was
No
accepted into
way.
3.
Where did this come from?
This insufferable need of wanting to save the world, that's where it came from. I think just wanting to help. I wanted to help people, so I wanted to be a doctor, and I battled with it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, it's too late, you're too old, you're going to be so old when you graduate. And then I realized I'm going to be that old anyway, so I might as well be that old and graduate with a
Absolutely,
doctor's
yeah.
degree. And so I had been accepted to pre-med. So 2009 was supposed to be my last season. I was supposed to start pre-med in 2010. And then that was the summer that then I met my husband. And then I did not leave.
Thank God. We would have some other, like a creative doctor who might be wearing fancy dresses and operating that would not look good. Believe me, that would not look good.
That would have been a great doctor.
No, you would have been a great
No,
doctor,
so then,
but the dresses would not look good. That time.
well, maybe I would never have had to have bother with the stress and distress of social media.
Yeah.
Would have made my life easier. So yes, then I ended up here, and then I ran a small size company for a long time, like a boutique company.
Yeah.
You know, and then we sold our house and we bought his grandparents' house. We lived in his parents' converted garage for 4 years to sacrifice to be able to pay for this house in the center. And I put my heart and soul in it. That way we could offer our clients somewhere to sleep. You know, I did all the tour planning, and then we started acquiring really big companies, and we got a really big volume on our touring. And so in 2018, we opened up a big agency.
Yeah. Please share the name.
Which then the name is no more. There is no more of this name. The name was an acronym of the 4 grandparents of my husband.
Okay.
But in closing the company, we also lost the name because I made a mistake in going into business with 2 business partners who did not show their true colors until we had already gone into business. And it was a very, 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 very bad situation. And in Italy,
but I think you really don't know how people are going to turn up. I think you really don't know how people are. You know people, but you really don't know how people are going to turn up after.
Oh, you don't. You don't. And I think going into business with people, merging companies, what's hard is that you kind of go, I always say it's like going from dating to marriage without living together first.
Absolutely, yeah. You don't know. It just happens. Yeah.
And so, but it was even worse than I could have possibly imagined.
I would like to add to this that, and when things fall apart, it's like a breakup.
Yeah. And the good thing for me is that, you know, at the age of 41, I know how to deal with toxic breakups. I don't get involved. I just walk away. So I cut my losses 100%. So instead of sitting and fighting and making a dirty fight, I just walked away. And I talked to my lawyer, and he said, if you want to fight for the company name, you're going to win. But you know, the Italian justice system is going to take 5 years. In this 5 years, you're going to be stuck with them. And I said, you know what? Do you want the 8 letters that don't even belong to your family? I said, you keep the 8 letters. I walk away with 1,000 values that you can never have.
Yeah.
So
learning.
And I think it was only fitting. Like, I mean, it's an end of a chapter in every single way. So it's just fitting.
Let's go back. Yeah. Sorry.
You know, exactly. But I also realized, like, during this year, you know, when people are like, are you gonna start a new company? And I was struggling a lot in the beginning of the summer. I was sitting a lot trying to figure out what could be a new company name, like what should I do? And then I realized I won't start a company because COVID is still raging. And then COVID will still be raging, and I'm not going to sit and spend hours and hours of time creating all this effort, both financial and time-wise, for it to just not go anywhere. And then by come late summer, early fall, I realized there is no company and there is no need for a brand because the brand is now. me.
Yeah.
It's literally going back to the basics one more time.
Yeah.
But the brand, the company is Tour Guide Mitra. She is the company. There is no need for another name or a holding company, an umbrella.
Yeah.
If anything, I will start with the TGM brand, which is the Tour Guide Mitra.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if I want to expand and grow, I will pop up a holding company above it that will allow me to do other things.
Yeah.
But in terms of touring, this is now going to be my brand. There won't be any different name or a different idea behind it. It's just going to be
Yeah.
her. You know, she is the leading lady.
It's beautiful. I
of
have
it.
an observation and I would like to know your views on it, that nowadays people want to travel with a real person, not a company. So they want to travel with Mitra, not some company. I mean, they see you as a person, but traveling with the company is, you don't know the face, you don't know the personality, but when they're booking with you, they know you. So what is your thoughts on this? That people want to travel with the company or with
I
a
think
person?
no, I absolutely agree with you, but I also don't think that's anything new. I think that has
Yeah.
been my business model for over a decade. Like has been my entire business model
Okay.
for a decade. That's why my company was a boutique size,
Yeah.
because people bought the the concept of, I tour them.
Yeah.
But then the problem with these concepts is that in the end of the day, there is only one of you. And for me,
There's a
normally,
limitation.
if you would have looked at my career before COVID, so November 2019,
Mhm.
I was already booked until March 2021.
Wow.
I
Wow.
already knew my entire work schedule
Yeah.
until March 2021 on purpose, leaving a few holes here and there because I
Yeah.
know I would get last minute requests. But in terms of my clientele, when they write me, I always tell them, if you want me, this is the price.
Yeah.
If you are one of my tour guides, this is the price.
Yeah.
Then I let them choose, and they still would always choose me.
Yeah.
But this would also end up with me having sometimes to tie myself into knots. And I have had clients that have moved their entire vacation schedule based on my availability because they
Wow.
show up too late asking for it.
Yeah.
No, they come up like in June and they're coming in 2 weeks. I'm like, so
What do you think is the factor that they are willing to shift their vacations? They are willing to pay more just to be with you. What do you think? What is the one big factor that is making them do all these things?
because it's like you said, they want to travel with the person. They
Yeah.
want that specific experience. And so for me, my first 4 years of running this business, I did not even have business cards.
Yeah.
It was all my business was entirely built word to mouth. It was families from families from families recommending. And then you work with schools, and then the parents overspill from the
Yeah.
kids come home and they're enthusiastic. I mean,
Mhm.
I've had parents write to me say, I don't know what you did to my child. I have never seen them so enthusiastic about learning or traveling or anything. They come home and they want to start volunteering. They're like, I don't know what you did, but I thank you. And I don't do anything. I just talk to them,
Yeah.
because my privilege when I work with students is that I'm actually not a teacher position and I'm not quite a student. I'm somewhere in between, but it's easier for them
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes to talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it's one of the things I truly love working with students. And I sometimes wonder if I would stop doing what I do, I would probably end up pursuing something with children,
Yeah. Yeah.
like working with students, working with school programs for diversity, for inclusion. I mean, this is something I do on the side a lot.
Yep.
Like I work a lot with the Harvard Diversity Debate Project.
Wow. That's
They were
great.
actually our nonprofit pledge for this year. We were supposed to
Wow.
have flown a whole class of them here this fall and do a tour, and then obviously that
Well,
one went to
then things
window.
happen.
But
Yeah.
so I think I might end up like in that field of career if I did not do what I do right now.
Yeah.
So for I think the factor is that when you build up a name or a brand around you, then
Yeah.
that's what people want to have. They want, it's like a quality assurance, right? So it's the
Absolutely.
same thing.
From a
There's this
person. From a person.
American American brand name that writes guidebooks
I know. I
of
am a
this
big
man.
fan.
Yeah,
I'm a
okay.
big fan.
I'm not. I'm absolutely not.
Big fan.
I'm
I mean,
absolutely not a big fan. I'm the opposite of a fan. I am the anti. I'm an anti.
I get it. I
Uh,
get it. Yeah.
I don't I don't prefer him. I don't prefer his writings. I don't prefer his methodology.
Yeah.
But he built up a whole brand around
Yeah.
himself
Yeah.
and then a tour
That's what I
concept
like.
around that.
Yeah, that's what I like.
But that is what you have to do if you want to grow as a business, because if
Yeah.
you want to stay only you, then you're going to have to in the end start charging exorbitant amounts of money to justify only you working. And then also you can't overwork yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing, before my child was born, I did 4 tours a day. I
A
worked from
day.
5 or 7 a.m. to
Wow.
midnight, 7
Wow.
days a week from March to October.
What were you
When she
eating?
was born,
What were you eating at that time? Like, what was the source of your
some
energy?
something in between tours, usually a lot of bananas, cereal bars,
Yeah.
sandwiches, you know,
You must be having
um,
some good
fruits,
energy bars. Yeah.
but fruits. So, I mean, and then when she was born, I promised not to work on Sundays,
Yeah.
except Sunday mornings. I'm always at the Coliseum on Sunday mornings. And I promised not to work night tours, but I was still
Yeah.
home at 6:30 every night. So like I have a child who has grown up her majority formative years of mom being gone more
Yeah.
than half of the year. November to March, I'm present, but the other
Yeah.
times, like I would leave when she was asleep and I would come home and she was either just having to go to sleep or she was already asleep.
Oh.
And so the same thing then, that's the part I absolutely don't want to restart again. I don't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
don't want to be overworking myself. Like I was just coming up to this peak of being able
Mm-hmm.
to slow down to
Mm-hmm.
be able to come home and pick her up from school. And this is the part that has been amazing with this year. I can bring her to school. I go pick her up from school. My youngest daughter has the
Spending time. Yeah.
absolute privilege. Her sister did not have that her whole first year, that
Yeah.
mom is always there. And, no separation anxieties have to develop from that.
Yeah.
And then so of course I really appreciate this aspect of it, but I think if you want to create a brand around yourself, I think you absolutely do. The hardest thing when you grow, and I speak from this from experience,
Yeah.
is to be able to surround yourself with people that have your work ethic and your principles so that you are
Absolutely.
comfortable leaving your clients in their hands,
Yeah.
because there is nothing worse than people coming to you and trusting you and you
Trusting you.
hand them over and then they are unhappy, they're displeased. This does enormous damage to your brand, especially when you still aren't, on a corporate level and it's a drop in the ocean. Like it can wipe out a whole 10% of future
Yeah.
clientele coming in,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And that is absolutely the hardest part, finding people that have the same type of work ethic. And
Yeah.
for me, for example, for a private tour, even if you pay me for 3 hours, I don't really mind like if I go a 30-minute over,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that means I give you a good service, I take
Yeah.
care of you. But there's some people that are very fiscal. They're very no,
Yeah.
and so
Like it's over.
it's a fine
Yeah.
it's a fine balance trying to build an empire as a tour guide around yourself, around a brand,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what countries you work in. I think in some
Yeah.
countries it might be easier because it's like ingrained in the culture that everyone needs to be a certain way.
Yeah.
But then I think in some places, it's a bit harder to find people that take it perhaps as serious as you do, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're very passionate and you put your heart and soul into it. It's but for me, I mean, I was very proud of the team of tour guides I collaborated with.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all great professionals. They all have
Yeah.
minimum 10 years work experience.
Yeah.
They were all very loved and high ranked by, our clientele.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of trial and error. I mean,
Yeah,
getting there, don't
absolutely.
get
You
me
don't know
wrong.
how people are going to behave. You just keep working with them, and then one day you realize it's working, and or it's
You have to
like
listen to the
negative.
feedback,
Yeah.
both from tour leaders that handle the groups or from the
Mm-hmm.
client themselves. And if I would have the groups, and let's say the mother company would send me an email like our group that we have a complaint from this guide on this tour,
Yeah.
and then I would ask him. I said, okay, do you want me to strike them out of the roster or I put them on a warning list? So we usually
Yeah.
put like one warning, but if it was 2 strikes and they were out, then they would never be put on the roster
Great.
again for those groups.
That's a good
you know
point. Yeah.
and then also because you need to also know that your client, like for example, I have a company, they send me 15,000 people a year, so
Wow.
I need to also, of course, like you need to listen. But then of course when I have some complaints, I would
Mhm.
look at the complaint, like the list, and I said,
Yeah.
why are you talking to me about one person having a complaint? I said, look at the same tour code, you have 36 positive reviews. I said,
Yeah.
and you want to discuss one, then this is an
Yeah.
unbalance, because it's like you can be the juiciest, sweetest peach in the whole basket, but there's still going to be somebody that doesn't like peaches. It doesn't take
Yeah.
away the fact that you are an amazing peach. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to sometimes balance the criticism,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have to I mean, obviously, you can never, some people are going to be like, it was too much talking. It was too little talking. I
Yeah,
wanted more
yeah.
time. I wanted less time. This is the hard nature of group tours, whereas a private tour, if you strictly do them, they're easier in a way because it's your client's tour.
It's
They can do
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
they want. They pay
yeah,
by
yeah.
the hour, like, whew, no?
You want to hear
But
or
I
not?
think it's
Yeah.
important to always have a dialogue and to listen. But also when you work with companies, you need to command also their respect. I had a meeting last year in London with one of the companies I work with for over 5 years. And they had a new person come in on a position from the collaborator I work with. And the first thing this person tells me is, I want you to lower your prices.
Wow. Yeah,
And I said, okay,
yeah,
no. I said, I've already had a price lock for you. And after 5 years, we're going to discuss how you pay me more because the ticket prices have gone up 4 times since we started
yeah,
collaborating. 4.
yeah.
And I've never raised the price. I said, this year you are going to pay more. You want to pay less? I said, then we're done. Oh, you're willing to let us go? I said, you're willing to let me go. I said, it's not me willing to let you go. I said, but if we start this type of conversation and I start sliding backwards, there is no longer a mutual respect.
Yep.
You only price press. I said, I am sure my competitors are offering you lower prices, but you remember all those times when I'm answering the phone at midnight, when I'm making sure that your groups have another 5 tickets the next morning, 9 hours later?
Yeah.
I said, I don't think your other agencies will give you that service for the lower price. I said, if you're willing to gamble, I said, you're welcome to go.
Yeah.
And even then my employees, they were like, are you really willing? And I said, there comes a time when you just have to put up a limit because
Yep.
yes, there's a collaboration, but the keyword is collaboration.
It's not
No, we as an
suppression.
agency cannot be expected to give you a 5-star service when you want to give me 7-Eleven prices. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't get 4 seasons when you want to pay for McDonald's. It doesn't work. So you have to also have like an amount of integrity going into business. And I do think that people that just take everything like this, like, oh, as much as possible, they
Yeah.
get greedy. Those are the people that work really poorly in the end. You are the
Yeah.
person that's going to end up employing 6 people to do one person's job because you're so overstretched
Yeah.
and your profit margins are far too little to justify the amount of work that you do. And I think this is a huge problem in tourism, that we have had to deal with a lot of people popping up on the
On
market
the
that are willing to
price.
undercut
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And but I don't think it's the proper direction to go.